Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our ordinary council meeting agenda briefing for the council meeting that will be next Monday evening at 7 p.m, the 16th of September here at the Kalgoorlie Town Hall. I open up tonight's meeting at 6 p.m, and on behalf of the City of Kalgoorlie-Boulder, I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners on the land which we meet today, and I'd also like to pay my respects to elders past and present. I will read the disclaimer noting our agenda, and that is that this particular meeting is being recorded and streamed live on the Council's website in accordance with the City's public participation in council meeting policy, which can be viewed on Council's website. All reasonable care is taken to maintain your privacy. However, as a visitor in the public gallery, your presence may be recorded. By remaining in the public gallery, it is assumed your consent is given if your image is broadcast. The recommendations contained in this agenda are officers' recommendations only and should not be acted upon until Council has resolved to adopt those recommendations. The resolutions of Council should be confirmed by perusing the minutes of the Council meeting at which these recommendations were considered. Members of the public should also note that they act at their own risk if they enact any resolution prior to receiving official written notification of Council's decision. The purpose for tonight's agenda briefing session is for councillors to ask questions and obtain additional information in respect to items presented on the ordinary council meeting agenda. Questions asked by councillors are to be answered by the CEO or person nominated by the CEO or person presiding. No decisions are made at agenda briefing sessions, and councillors, no statements are to be made and no debate on items conducted. In attendance this evening we have the Deputy Mayor, Kirsty Della, Councillor Deborah Bodicar, Councillor Terence Winner, Councillor Kyron O'Donnell, Councillor Nadia Turner, Councillor Carla Viskovich. Also joining us this evening are members of staff. Acting CEO, Mia Hicks, good evening to you, welcome. Our Director of Engineering, Louis Camporelli, is here this evening. Also joining us is the Acting Director of Community Development, Lauren Chapman-Holly. Good evening to you, Lauren. Joining us as well as the Executive Manager of Finance, Casey Radford. Casey, good evening. And Paul Lees is here this evening as well, Acting Director of Development and Growth. Also alongside our support staff in ELT include our Governance Officer, Jamie Boys, our IT Service Delivery Officer, Sashi Kakala, and our Coordinator of Strategic Grants and Admin, Damara Langenberg. We have no visitors, we have no press. We have an apology from Councillor Johnson this evening, and we believe Councillor Brownlee will be late. At this point in time, he is an apology, however that may change as we progress. We have apologies from staff, Director of Development and Growth, Alex Weiss, Acting Director of Corporate and Commercials, Andra Kerno, and Executive Manager of Governance and Risk Services, Francis Liston, and our CEO is on leave. Councillors, just before we head into the reports of committees and reports of officers, please note that there are three motions of which previous notice has been given. Councillor Winner has one item relating to councillors' key performance indicators. Councillor Turner has two items provided to you tonight on paper as well, one around CY O'Connor and the other around a Changing Places facility. Our reports of committees, we have nil. Our reports of officers, we can start through you, CEO, with Casey Radford, our Acting Executive Manager of Finance, for the accounts payable for the report, August 2024. Casey, come forward, and we welcome Councillor Brownlee at 6 minutes.
Good evening, Mayor, councillors. Our accounts payable report for August, the total spend for the year was 9.3 million. This is in line with our average monthly spend, and there's nothing unusual to report.
Thank you, Casey. Succinct. Any councillors' questions this evening? Thank you. Casey, next is also with you. Statement of Financial Activity, July 2024.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Presented is the monthly Statement of Financial Activity. There are three reportable variances for this month. 1.3k timing variance, which is a movement in employee provisions relating to the long service leave accounting adjustments for the prior financial year. 140k permanent variance in the right of use asset, which is attributable to a lease for reserve 41254, which is for a longer term than originally budgeted for, and a 1.9k transfer to reserves movement, which is a timing difference relating to the interest being earned on reserve funds invested in term deposits.
Thank you, Casey. Councillors, any questions? Councillor O'Donnell.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Can I ask a question as to how much money the city does have invested in for a return, like with a bank or a financial institution?
So you're
Can I
asking
take that on notice?
our current reserves?
Yes, how much we've got invested elsewhere.
Yeah, they should be in your reports,
Yeah.
councillor,
Yeah.
which we can get Casey to provide you with some further information if you like.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Casey. Excellent.
I'll take that one on notice, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Any further questions, councillors? No? Thank you. Item 3 is our long-term financial plan. Back with you, Casey.
Thank you. The long-term financial plan has been prepared for the period 2024 to 2034 with the 2005 as the base of the plan. The RBA estimates CPI will be between 2 to 3% in the future. This is what has formed the base for year-on-year increases in income and expenditure. The long-term financial plan accounts for $4.99 million of capital expenditure to be partially funded by $160 million of capital grants and $69 million of loans over the 10-year period. To achieve this, a rating strategy of CPI plus 1.5 to 2% has been applied. The financial health indicator sits within the range of 72 to 94 for the span of the plan. Some projects have deliberately been excluded from the plan due to unknown costing estimates and funding sources at this point in time. Council, city staff and the public are to note that this is a planning tool and contains many assumptions and influences, both internal and external. It is therefore reviewed annually. The endorsement of the long-term financial plan does not constitute a commitment or any agreement to any of the proposals or projects within the plan that have not already been approved at an ordinary council meeting.
Thank you, Casey. Councillors, any questions for long-term financial? Councillor Turner.
Just through the Mayor, if we could have some cross-referencing of that long-term financial plan between what is on our agenda to what is actually in it. There was a couple of things. For example, it said the pool at the Oasis, 8 million in grants on our agenda. In the long-term financial plan, it says 10 million. So just maybe if we have a look before next week and do some cross-referencing to make sure that our agenda matches up to it. We've got
The agenda this evening, or as in what is or currently forecast?
So for the OCM next week, there's some noting in the agenda, but it's not the same as what's in the long-term financial plan. So there could be typos.
Casey, I'm not sure if there would be typos. Potentially it would be just funding that's in other particular locations.
Yes, Mr Mayor, the $2.5 million is for future years. So that's the difference.
Thank you. Thank you. We'll take that note. Any councillors, any further questions? Councillor Viskovich.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Is it possible to have somewhere the list of the items that are not included in the forecast of the long-term financial plan, just so that we can have a reference to that somewhere in that forecast?
Sure. We could provide, Casey, through yourself, a list of those projects that potentially council have discussed but are not included. Would that be appropriate?
I can speak to that now. In the long-term financial plan, on one of the pages, there is the excluded projects listed. It includes the Oasis Master Plan, the extended Oasis Master Plan, the Golf Course Resort, and the Airport Master Plan beyond the Terminal Design Project.
Thank you, Casey. Did I have another question for Casey for long-term financials? No. Thank you, Casey. Item 15.1.4, West Australian Local Government Association 2024 Annual General Meeting, voting delegates. Acting CEO.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council's requested to nominate 2 voting delegates and 2 proxy delegates for the Western Australian Local Government Association's Annual General Meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Acting CEO. Councillors, any questions on that? Acting CEO, would you prefer to have those names before the OCM next week?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, that would be great.
Thank you. No further questions? Item 15.2, Development and Growth. Mr. Lees, Acting Director of Development and Growth. Proposed outbuilding at lot 861 3A at Burra Street, Somerville 6430.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. It's myself organised there. Okay, so the first report is proposed outbuilding at lot 861 3A at Barrow Street, Somerville. So the city's received a development application for an outbuilding or a shed at 3A at Barrow Street, Somerville. The proposed shed replaces the existing container dome structure on the site. The proposed building exceeds the permitted area and height specified by Local Planning Policy 3, Outbuildings in Residential and Rural Zones Policy, in that the policy sets an acceptable floor area of 120 square metres. However, the proposed building is 290 square metres. The policy sets a maximum wall height of 4 metres, whilst the proposed building has a wall height of 5.4 metres. And the policy sets a ridge height of 5 metres, whilst the application seeks 6.4 metres. It should be noted that the policy for outbuildings in residential and rural areas also applies to the mixed-use zone. The policy replaced a former policy that allowed up to 200 square metres within a range of lots down as small as 300 square metres. So in some ways the new policy is more onerous. We've considered the application and the scale of the application in terms of the context of the site, the fairly large sites within a mixed-use zone, and the proximity of residences and other buildings in the area, including outbuildings, and in particular, the closest other resident where their house is approximately 15 metres away. So in our view, that the extra height to the ridge with the trees in place and the distance is negligible and hardly noticeable. And it is considered that within the overall setting in terms of lot sizes, dwelling separation and other development, the variation to the policy is considered to be an acceptable outcome as summarised in the report's conclusion.
Thank you, Acting Director. Councillors, questions?
Through the Mayor, that's quite a difficult question to answer. Every application is slightly different and we have to look at every application on its merits. It would also depend on the scale of the operation and the impacts of that operation on surrounding properties. So yes, we would have to look at it quite carefully, as any commercial use is going to have some off-site impacts and how they've been mitigated. However, in this case, we've been assured that the proposal is for residential purposes, and it's for storing of personal effects, which I don't think we need to discuss the content thereof, but yeah. So therefore, we consider that the use is appropriate and yeah, I think consistent with what they're wanting to do with the site.
Thank you, Acting Director. Councillor Turner?
Okay, that's fine. I don't have an objection to someone putting a shed on a block that size anyway, but I do have, there's a very large truck parked in there. How do council officers monitor such conditions if we...
Truck, a part of the rear of the photo, or is it part of the foreground? Okay, thank you. That's the truck. Very good observation. Acting Director.
Yes, through the Mayor. Usually, look, obviously the city doesn't have enough officers to go knocking on doors. However, usually the response is complaints-based, and obviously in this circumstance that the city will receive a complaint if there's hammering, welding, excessive hammering, welding, panel beating or spraying or whatever going on, and they're not suggesting any of those will, but you know what I mean.
Thank you, Acting Director. Councillor Turner? All good. Thank you. Councillor Viskovich.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just with a shed this size, if we do approve the shed, I'm assuming there would be noise limitations on the area that if we had complaints, what would be the process there?
Councillor Turner, it's in the report, it's indicated to be used as a residential outbuilding. However, the acting director has also said probably what's going into the shed is probably not up for council discussion based on that particular fact. But if acting director, if you wanted to add anything further.
Residential purposes. I suppose you can draw your mind across what that could be. But yes, it's certainly to do with somebody's, personal residential activities, not commercial.
Councillor Viskovich.
Yeah, so, and just with the noise, if we were to have a noise complaint, if the shed went forward, what's the process for those people around the building? If they were to make complaints, what would happen?
Go ahead, acting director.
Through the mayor. As the report says, the shed is to be used for storage. However, if there are noisy activities associated with it, the environmental noise regulations and the local laws will kick in. So there is other legislation available to control the noise being emitted if that was to happen.
Thank you. Councillor Bodica.
Hi. I read here that it says that it's, the site is situated amongst other established dwellings and that there's also light industrial out there as well. So would this not fit into the specifications of light industry, putting that shed in there? Because it says
Councillor is residential and
light
proposed
industry.
land use is incidental to residential. Acting Director, any further to add to that?
No, Mr Mayor, that's actually correct.
Oh, sorry, what I'm trying to say is, so it's got light industry in that. So would this proposal be, sort of within that framework of light industry, if they're going to be putting the shed there, even though it is a residential area? That's what's saying in the
There's
report.
no light industry as mentioned on this particular site for town planning purposes, but
Okay.
Acting Director.
Yep.
Through the mayor, I'm thinking that your question is around bulk and scale. We've talked about noise and
Yep.
effects on neighbours, so I'm thinking it might be around bulk and scale.
Okay.
And that's correct, that it could be of the bulk and scale for a light industry,
Yeah.
but the proposal is for residential incidental.
Given the fact it's a large block as well. Yes, yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Bodica. Any further questions, councillors? Thank you, Paul. Item 15.2.2, the DAP application, proposed hotel number 10, Gateacre Drive, Somerville.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Council is asked to endorse the attached responsible authority report for a 4-storey hotel at lot 100, number 10, Gateacre Drive, Somerville. That's the site that is on the corner of Great Eastern Highway and Gateacre Drive. The 4-storey hotel consists of 200 rooms, ancillary restaurant, function room, gym, other services and amenity facilities. They're proposing a total of 2 visitor parking bays. They're also proposing 17 bicycle parking bays, 5 proposed for staff and 12 for visitors. They propose to retain the significant vegetation of the site to the corner, as well as planting 76 trees and obviously another number of shrubs and grasses. As can be seen on page 33, the parking bay per 4 rooms. So that would mean 50 bays. However, they're providing 105 because of the size of the site. They're providing 10 staff parking bays and 22 visitor bays. And obviously that's mostly to do with visitors attending the restaurant and possibly for some for the function room. But as you know, many of these hotels, those attending the function room for some kind of conference, they will be staying in the hotel as well. There's also a condition added to require 2 bus bays. They do show some bays out on the front on the loop driveway, but we believe that was important that bus parking was provided for. There were 2 submissions received. One was from Overlooking and Privacy. Main Roads WA. The statutory period for a response from a public authority or an agency within the regulations is 42 days. Main Roads WA provided their comments significantly outside of the 42 days. And in essence, we would have had the right to refuse their comments and to have not included them in the application. Their starting comment was that in principle they have no issues with it, and then they went on to raise a number of concerns. I suppose the significant concerns, and we've had conversations with them about that, and I'll come to those, but because this is a DAP application, the DAP is very unwilling to give extensions to councils for them to consider these matters prior to the matter going to DAP. So it's very, very hard to get an extension. And we did receive a small extension. However, it needed to come to council, so we proposed conditions to address these matters through ongoing conditions to give time for those matters to be addressed. The key points that Main Roads W have with regard to the application is 1, the left turn off Great Eastern Highway. At the moment, very large truck and trailer units are taking that left turn, and in doing so, obviously with no development, do not have an issue with having to be careful or decelerate or manage any traffic outcomes. What this is doing is introducing a new development with a curved driveway with possibly an access furthest away from Great Eastern Highway and an egress or an exit closer to the Great Eastern Highway. So with that outcome, you would then have vehicles and taxis and possibly buses doing the left turn and decelerating to enter into the development at the same time you have trucks coming around the corner. Now, Main Roads WA have said that they believe, if required, there is sufficient space for a slip lane to allow that deceleration movement. But what they're after is some further video analysis so that they better understand the traffic movements at that intersection and then can assess what's required. So the condition that we have imposed, or we're suggesting and asking council to endorse, allows the capability for, number 1, for the DAP to further investigate this and consider it, and 2, for the matter to be further considered and discussed with Main Roads while the proposal is being worked up.
Thank you, Acting Director. Councillors, questions on 15.2.2. Councillor Turner.
So I'm a little bit confused about the parking. I thought that the parking requirements were much higher than that, and I'm happy to be corrected on that. I thought you needed a lot more parking than that. I thought it was 1 bay per room, so I don't know that. But then, because in the report it says the removal of 30 parking bays is acceptable to put in 17 bicycle bays. Now, I would have thought if you're removing 30 car bays, you're 30 people driving a car, are they going to be double dinking on the bike? Because you would need
Thank you,
17.
Councillor Turner.
I'm really confused
Got your
about
question. Acting Director, can you please clarify the policy regarding hotels and the spaces of parking that are required under our policies, please?
Through the Mayor, I'm just looking at this report. I did check on this matter before I left the office, and I'm just looking at the parking here. Okay, so if you look at page number 10, at the table, have you got the RA in front of you? So if you look at page number 10 of the RA, there's an item there, car parking. So it says Schedule 1 of the scheme requires 1 bay for 4 rooms or 50 bays. The proposal is 137 bays, so therefore it's compliant. Under bicycle parking, it requires 1 space for 20 rooms, which would be 10 spaces and 1 visitor park. I think the confusion is in the provision of bicycle parking rather than the overall parking. But in my view, the parking is excessive. However, the location of the site and the area of land and the size of the hotel means that they have the ability to incorporate a lot more car parks into the site than you'd have in a more urban environment.
Thank you, Acting Director. Just to add to that, holiday accommodation and hotel have 2 different parking requirements. Holiday accommodation requires 1 parking bay for every room. Hotels require 1 for every 4. Thank you, Paul. Got me too, Councillor Turner, that's for sure. Councillor O'Donnell. Councillor Viskovich.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to triple check whether the latest scheme change has changed this zoning of this land at all, or has it always been this zoning?
Thank you, Councillor Viskovich.
Through the Mayor, that's a very good question. It's usually what somebody says when they're trying to think. To be honest, there are a number of sites which have remained as the same zoning, but I'd have to go back and look at the scheme. I'm sorry, off my bat, I can't answer.
Thank you, Acting Director. Councillors, any further questions? One further one from me, Acting Director. If you can provide some further details on the Special Control Area 8, Explosives Reserve Safety Buffer Requirements, if that can be provided to councillors for noting as well too, please.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you. No further questions, councillors, on 15.2.2. 15.3. Thank you, Acting Director. This evening, Community Development, Acting CEO, Mayor Hicks.
Thank you, Mayor Wilson. Council is asked to endorse officers' ranking and rating of 1 grant application, the Kalgoorlie-Boulder Sport Lighting Upgrade application, to the Department of Local Government, Sport and Cultural Industries for the 25-26 Club Night Lights Forward Planning Grant Round. Noting that there has been an administration error with the attachments, which will be rectified in the agenda for the next council meeting next week.
Thank you, Acting CEO. Councillors, any questions? Thank you. Item 15.3.2, Acting CEO is also with yourself, and I presume it's also the same with these confidentials, is that correct?
Yes, thank you,
Yep.
Mayor Wilson. And this item is for council to endorse 1 grant application to the department as well for the 25-26 Community Sport and Recreation Facilities Fund, and that's the future planning grant round for the construction of a 50-metre outdoor swimming pool, noting that this would be the city's 2nd attempt at the CSR FFF funding for this project, which was approved for council in August 2023 for the 24-25 Forward Planning Grant Round.
Thank you, Acting CEO. Councillors, any questions? None, thank you. Item 15.3.3, we welcome the Acting Director of Community Development, Lauren Chapman-Holly, to the podium this evening to talk community bus.
Thank you, Mayor Wilson. Council is asked to receive this report this evening relating to the requirement for a community bus in response to a notice of motion from the Deputy Mayor at the July Ordinary Council meeting. The report addresses the engagement that's been undertaken with key stakeholders in regards to the demand for a community transport for seniors, for people with disabilities and other vulnerable members of the community, and also a community bus for use by community groups. And following consideration by Council, the outcome will be reported back to the Seniors Focus Group.
Thank you, Acting Director. Any questions for 15.3.3? No questions. Thank you. 15.4 Engineering. Our Director of Engineering, Louis Camporelli. T024 2324 minor works at Kingsbury Park.
Thank you, Mayor Wilson. Council's asked to consider the submission received for tender T024 2324 minor building works at Kingsbury Park. The project encompasses the upgrade of Kingsbury Park Youth Precinct, and the tender's scope of works includes the construction of new structures and installation of park furniture and play equipment. The officer recommendation has been compiled through a thorough process of due diligence by obtaining a quantity survey to confirm pricing. This showed that the price was 30% over the quantity survey. By going with the offer recommendation, it allows the city officers to directly approach suppliers if within the last 6 months of the local government has, according to the requirements of this division, publicly invited tenders for the supply of goods or services, but no tender was submitted that met the tender specifications or satisfied the value for money assessment. Should Council adopt the alternative motion and accept the tender, Council will be required to do two things: A, an absolute majority and a budget amendment, and B, that Council awards a contract to the preferred tenderer, subject to a delegation of the CEO to finalise any negotiations in the form of a contract.
Thank you, Director. Councillors, any questions? Councillor Turner.
There was a huge variation in the two tenderers, like nothing I've ever seen before. And one of the tenderers obviously didn't meet a lot of the criteria, while one of the tenderers did meet some of the criteria and had quite a good weighted score, I would say, on there, apart from the price. Are there, through the Mayor, are there other suppliers other than the second tenderer, the tenderer that was over budget but met a lot of the things? Are there other suppliers we can approach with this, or are we pigeonholed in of how many suppliers can do this work?
Director of Engineering.
Through the Mayor, we can go out now, if Council decides to reject this tender, we can go out and approach other companies that can do these works, but it has to be the whole project that we tendered for. So we can't take pieces of it, it has to be as we tendered. So yes, we can go out to a number of other companies, and we could possibly go out to the company that tendered as well.
Thank you, Director. Thank you, Councillor Turner. Councillor Winner.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I've actually got three questions, if that's permitted. Thank you. The first question is the Director able to provide any additional information, either on notice or in confidence, as to why the significant difference between the two tenderers?
Thank you. Through the Mayor, the first tenderer didn't meet all the requirements of the tender, and they just picked out small parts that are there, what they normally do, their business as usual, whereas the second tender addressed the whole tender.
Thank you.
Thank you. The second question is there anything that can be done to see Tender A submission become a more conforming submission given the extremely significant cost difference?
The majority of the building works required, and I don't think, without speaking to them, we're not allowed to speak to them until we finish the process, we don't know if they've got the capacity to actually take on the whole building works.
Thank you. And my final question, Mr Mayor. Just to the Mayor, given Council agreed to shut the park entirely on the provision that it would be to ensure the project would be ready in its entirety by Christmas holidays, the choice of either a delay into at least February or a 30% cost increase is disappointing. And I'd like to ask, is there any other options that Council can consider at this point in time, as neither of the current options are preferable?
Thank you, Director. I'm pretty sure that's probably the process that the Office of Recommendation has worked on for you, Councillor Winner, but I'll let the Director add to that.
Until we finalise next week, we can't give it a definitive date until we've spoken to people on how much longer it would take, or if it would take any longer at all. So once we've met with new companies, should the council decide to reject the tender, then we wouldn't know until we've done that.
Just to follow up, if that's okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I interpreted the officer's report slightly different, that if we were to cancel it, we are looking at a delay to at least February. Is that correct?
That was the anticipated delay, but that would be the longest delay that we would anticipate.
Thank you. Councillor Viskovich.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Seconding Councillor Winner's concerns, I'm just wondering, with having the project already approved and underway, is it normal for the contractors not to be confirmed when we've approved a project and the project has commenced?
Director.
Normal processes following with our project managers, and they've got their timeline, and tenders go out according to that timeline. This tender was like every other tender, and it fit into the timeline, the scope and the timing of the works still fit into for the opening. This was the critical part of it, but the work we should have been meeting about this in August, but we were doing the due diligence, so that just pushed it out to September, unfortunately for us.
Thank you, Director. Any further questions, councillors? Thank you, Director of Engineering. Item 15.5, Corporate and Commercial Budget Amendment, Oasis Change Rooms. Casey. Our Acting Executive Manager, Finance.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The City has prioritised the upgrade of the Oasis change rooms in its 2025 budget. However, due to increased contractor costs and material fees, the amount budgeted is now insufficient. The 2025 budget does include $250,000 for the replacement of the 50 metre pool bulkhead. However, the bulkhead...
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just some potential changes to the layout that this may bring. I do have concerns over the increased expenditure budget for this project, and would like to ask the Director if there's any other options that Council may consider, which officers may have considered when preparing this report, which may offer greater value for money given the potential facility upgrades which may be coming.
Thank you, Councillor Winner. Acting Manager.
We'll take that one on notice.
Executive Manager. Thank you. Councillors, any further questions? Thank you, Casey. Councillors, that wraps up with no confidential items and our ordinary council meeting to be next Monday evening, the 16th of September, 2020 Town Hall. We will wrap up this evening's ordinary council meeting agenda briefing at 6:41. Thank you for your attendance. Thank you, staff. And thanks to those who have tuned in. Thank you.